Got some women's basketball news. USC has 2 preseason All-Americans. Juju Watkins, of course, ready to take the throne from Caitlin Clark as the superstar of the sport, but she has a teammate as well, Kiki Iriafen. She is also a preseason All-American. The Trojans are going to be incredible this year. Be ready to see them on national TV all the time. Back to football now. Game Leaders, presented by Gatorade, looks at the top 10 scoring defenses in the country right now. And you see some Big Ten teams are in there, including Ohio State and Penn State, which got our Anthony Herron thinking, it's time for a list. Top 5 defenses is this week's Impact 5 from Anthony Herron. Just the Big Ten specifically, 5-1, your best defenses in the league. Start with number 5.
Now, 5, the list as a whole was really difficult because of the volume of the league and the amount of teams in it. But starting at number 5, Nebraska, who would have been higher on this list even, but they are coming off of a difficult performance, let's call it, against that Indiana offense that we've been raving about throughout the show. But the total body of work for this Cornhuskers defense, especially what they do on the interior of that defensive front. Ty Robinson is built like some kind of a Marvel character for what he's able to do on the inside. The size, the speed, the strength, the tenacity he plays with, and every level for Nebraska has playmakers in it. And from a statistical perspective, they're certainly really good, leading the Big Ten in sacks. And Tony White, one of the better defensive minds in the sport. Cornhuskers have been exceptional for the most part this season. They're going to be very testy when they step back onto the field.
21 sacks on the year. Like you said, nobody in the conference has more than them right now. Your number 4 team resides in State College.
They do, and I love what the Penn State Nittany Lions are doing in the first season that Tom Allen is leading that defense. And yes, it's been, from a pass rush perspective, a bit inconsistent because the talent that's there, the standard that Penn State has the potential to ascend to, isn't there every single week. But man, Denai Dennis Sutton hits the quarterback on a regular basis. Abdul Carter, for a guy playing defensive end for the first time, is phenomenal for what he's able to do in rushing the quarterback. And they're top 5 in points per game, in total defense, in run defense. They get off the field on third down. The pace of play and the way that they swarm to the football on such a consistent basis, it's a defense that you feel when you turn on the film for Penn State on that side of the football.
14 points per game. That's all they're giving up. But they have been so good on third downs. They have the second best opponent third down conversion rate in the conference. The story of the Big Ten this year has been Indiana, and they're your number 3 team.
And frankly, man, statistically, there's not a defense in the Big Ten this season that's been better statistically than the Indiana Hoosiers. Their defense, when you look at the rankings for where they're at in points per game, in run defense, in quarterback sacks, you're combining all the different elements of what can make a team excellent on defense. Indiana ranks at or near the top in virtually every category. And they've got playmakers on the interior like C.J. West, Mikal Kamara, who rushes the corner. You just talked to Aiden Fisher a few minutes ago, one of the most productive linebackers in the conference. And they're coordinated at such a high level by Bryant Haynes. They will pillage the village on any given snap. They'll rush the pocket. They will blitz from all different angles. And when they need to lay back, they're capable of doing that and just being position sound as well. So I love so much about what Indiana brings to the table. And so if there is a game, if there is a moment where the offense happens to take a little dip or a bit of a step back, they've got a defense that will keep them in every single contest.
They're best in the Big Ten in rushing defense, too.
Right.
Now, part of that is because they're getting up on their opponents with their offense scoring, so their opponents have to throw and not run as much. But still, that is not something I think very few people expected them to have the best rushing defense in the Big Ten back when this season started. Your number 2 defense in the Big Ten comes from the number 1 team in the country.
And when you think about the fact that Oregon is able to have a potential Heisman winner as a quarterback leading the way, all those playmakers on offense that we were talking about, but also field a defense that's playing at this level that's actually getting better throughout the season, even with maybe their best player, Jordan Burch, out of the lineup for the time being with an injury. But they still have Derek Harmon, Michigan State transfer, playing at a high level. Mateo Uiagalelei doing big things as a young player off the edge also. They've been banged up at linebacker, and it hasn't necessarily mattered because without Jeffrey Bassa being able to play extensive minutes for chunks of the season here, they've had Bryce Betcher, the baseball star, who leads them in tackles also. So you have so many different areas of Oregon's defense led by Tosh Lupoy that have been doing big things on a consistent basis this season. I gave them the edge on Indiana just because I like the schedule that Oregon has faced, the offense offenses overall that the Ducks have had to deal with have been more formidable on a more consistent basis, both out of conference and in conference. And so while statistically they're not on par with what we've seen from Indiana's defense, I'm factoring in just the strength of the schedule that Oregon's played, and they've been really impressive throughout the season.
Yeah, they'll get an interesting test against Luke Altmaier and the Fighting Illini coming up this week. Your number one defense in the Big Ten right now goes to…
Start to finish, it has been the Ohio State University Buckeyes. The guys out of Columbus are doing big things, and they've got big playmakers at every spot. And yes, the last time we saw them on the field, they were facing an Oregon offense that is amongst the best in the country. And so the Ducks were able to move the football. The Ducks were able to get the rock into the end zone. It's the one time that a 100-yard rusher has been able to gain that kind of yardage against Ohio State. But when you look at the overall, the total body of work with Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Lathan Ransom, and Denzel Burke on the back end, Caleb Downs at the safety position. They've got guys who've been making big plays in Columbus who have been absolutely shutting the water off on opponents for the bulk of the season. Yes, there are big tests that await the Ohio State University Buckeyes, but up to this point in the season, there's not a defense in the Big Ten that has been more consistently dominant than what we've seen from Ohio State. And we talked about the attitude that they may come off of that bye week with. I do think we will continue to see a level of fervor, a level of energy that I think suits a team that knows they've got big goals in front of them.
You see the 251 total yards they give up per game. Not only best in the Big Ten, but second best in the country. Ross, what are your thoughts on that top five that Anthony just gave?
No real complaints here. Anthony looks good. It's just amazing if we started in the preseason. If you had told me that would be the top five defense, so the top couple wouldn't be a surprise, right? But the others certainly would be. That we're here talking about Indiana as the number 3 defense in the Big Ten is pretty incredible. We heard from Aiden Fisher there on the team's tackle leader. It's just pretty remarkable that they stand at 7th nationally in total defense. Illinois, would be somebody I would think maybe you were close to putting in that.
Mm-hmm.
You look at what Illinois has done. If you just remove that Purdue game, it's a little hiccup that they allowed 49 points. So that kind of brings down all the stats. But in four games this season, the Illini, allowed single digits only defensively. So impressive. What is surprising is that Iowa or Michigan is not on the list. And I know why they're not, but imagine in preseason, right? Had you been told Michigan and Iowa wouldn't be in the top 5 halfway through the year? Is pretty shocking. Crazy year.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, when you look at Iowa's total body of work, they've been impressive, but inconsistent throughout the season. A couple of different games where the passing defense, especially for the Hawkeyes, giving up bigger chunks of yardage. Even the run defense wasn't that impressive against Michigan State last week. So a lot of potential there for Iowa, but it hasn't been that consistent.
Yeah, and there's some other units that have done some great things. Minnesota's got some great defensive stats thus
especially
far.
Against the pass.
But that's Anthony's top 5 defenses right now. Quick thoughts coming up on the matchups to watch for this weekend before we go. You're watching Big Ten Today on the Big Ten Network.